Welcome, seekers of the past, to our historical journey. Today, we witness a dark and ruthless reign. 400 years of bitter slavery silenced the cries of a chosen people, bound in eternal chains. A ruthless king unleashed his ultimate terror, casting newborn Hebrew boys into the freezing Nile. Yet from this unspeakable and tragic sorrow, a fragile beacon of hope emerged upon the water. This tiny basket held the fate of a nation. Let us uncover the survival of this chosen child. The river's current churned with unforgiving mud. A crimson sunset cast a dreadful shadow on the waves. Fierce winds howled through the dense green thickets near the bank. The water around the reeds bubbled with dark secrets. A small woven basket bobbed among the tall shadows. Inside this fragile vessel, a helpless infant cried. Piercing wails of the innocent child echoed loud. Murky, cold water slowly seeped into the pitch-black base. Wrapped in a coarse linen cloth, he shivered in the cold. His face was stained with bitter tears and muddy drops. Every jolt threatened to sink the fragile little craft. The infant gasped as the dark abyss called aloud. Beneath the dark surface of the deep and murky depths, massive predators circled the lonely, weeping boy. Huge crocodiles with glowing yellow eyes drew right near. Their jagged teeth gleamed under the fading light of dusk. Thick, scaly armor broke the surface of the murky tide. A massive beast swam closer, hunting its fragile prey. Each second pushed the child closer to his tragic doom. Danger lingered beneath the uncertain, flowing stream. The beast opened its massive jaws to swallow the prize. Dark river water mixed with the shadows dropping down. The infant gave out one deafening cry of sheer dread, but a sudden rush of water pushed the basket away. The massive beast snapped in vain against the empty, dark space. The fragile vessel slipped through the shadows by a hair. How did this child end up left alone in a realm of beasts? What dark forces condemned an infant to this tragic fate? To understand the injustice of this dreadful moment, we must turn the clock back by 400 bitter years. Think about the choice of a mother in a time of war. If your child was targeted by a cruel tyrant's law, would you surrender to the gods or risk everything? Let us witness the grand journey ahead. The hero of our epic tale was not born a free man. He was born a humble slave in the lands of Goshen. The Egyptian Empire had forgotten about Joseph. Ancient pacts of peace were buried deep in desert sands. A dark cloud of despair hung over the Hebrew people as a new king ascended to the glorious throne. This Pharaoh was a master of absolute tyranny. His heart was as hard as the stones of the pyramids. Watching the slaves multiply in sheer incredible strength, the ruler grew paranoid and gripped by endless fear. "They are too many and too mighty," he whispered softly. "If war breaks out, they will join our foes and destroy us." He stripped away their freedom with a heavy iron hand. Thousands of innocents were forced into binding chains. Taskmasters cracked their cruel whips without a shred of grace. Sweat mixed in the scorching mud of the vast building sites. Weakened slaves hauled massive stones across the burning dunes. Their bodies built grand cities for a cruel madman king. Old men collapsed under the crushing weight of the mud bricks. The sting of the whip was their only tragic reward. Women wept as their families were torn apart by force. Groans of the weak echoed in the unforgiving wind. Yet a miracle occurred amidst the bitter torment. The more they were oppressed, the more the Hebrews prospered. This bold defiance provoked the ultimate act of hate. The Pharaoh issued a decree of utter ruin. He summoned the midwives, giving a chilling command. "Destroy each newborn Hebrew boy upon the birthing stool." The midwives feared God more than the anger of the king. They let them live, sparking the Pharaoh's dreadful wrath. Outraged, the tyrant unleashed his guards upon the city. A grim hunt began in the dirt alleys of Goshen. Gods smashed down the frail wooden doors of the Hebrew tents. They searched through the shadows to find any hidden boys. Gods tore infants from their weeping mothers' fragile arms. Cries of deep anguish pierced the silence of the dark night. The king ordered the infants to be thrown into the Nile. The river of life became a watery, dark grave. Pure innocence stained the sacred river a crimson red. Beasts devoured the bodies of the helpless little boys. Mothers watched in horror as their sons sank in the depths. Wails of deep despair reached the heavens, but found no reply. Hope was lost under the shadows of the Grand Pyramids. An entire generation faced a tragic ending. Ancient records claim the dark agony was profound. The Egyptian empire thrived on the sorrow of slaves. The cries of the Hebrews reached a peak of untold sorrow. Yet from this deep darkness, a savior was to be born. Amidst this unspeakable cruelty and dark madness, one brave woman dared to defy the empire's wrath. Her name was Jochebed, a woman of the house of Levi. She bore a beautiful baby boy that spring. Looking into his soft eyes, she saw a spark of pure light. She knew this child was destined for a grand purpose. For 3 fearful months, she hid him deep in the dark shadows. Muffling his cries as cruel patrols marched nearby, she stayed awake at night, guarding his soft sleep with her life. A sudden knock sent shivers down her aching spine. Her daughter Miriam helped keep the secret well hidden, but the child grew stronger, and his voice became loud. The child could not be hidden as time slipped fast away. Footsteps of the royal guards grew closer every day. She knew soldiers would soon break down her frail wooden door. Doom awaited her child if she simply sat and cried. Driven by a mother's unyielding desperation, she hatched a plan of sheer lunacy and boundless faith. If Pharaoh demanded her son to go to the Nile, she would give him to the water, but on her own terms. She would not let him sink like countless others before. She would build him a shield against the heavy, crushing waves. Jochebed went to the thick reeds by the muddy bank shores. She gathered papyrus stalks with trembling, scarred hands. Weaving them together, she formed a secure shelter, a vessel of hope against the tyrant's dark decree. This was not just a basket. It was a vessel of faith, a mother's final plea to the heavens for a chance. To protect her son from the murky, cold, sinking river, she sealed the basket tight with thick pitch and hot tar. Her hands were forever stained with sticky bitumen. Each smear was a silent prayer to the Lord on high. The tar filled every gap in the woven papyrus, making it waterproof to face the heavy storm. The basket became an ark of salvation in the night, a fragile shield to defend against the cruel world. Holding her sleeping child close for one last painful time, Jochebed wept in silence under the morning mist. She kissed his warm cheek and placed him in the small wooden craft. The soft blanket wrapped him in a mother's pure love. He looked so peaceful, unaware of the evil around. His small chest rose and fell with every soft breath. With a shattered, torn heart, she carried the basket forth. She walked to the edge of the mighty river Nile. The cold water lapped against her muddy, weak, trembling feet. She released her grip and let the current take him. It was a moment of absolute dark surrender, yielding her child to the river that claimed so many souls. She watched as the basket drifted off into the wild. She collapsed on the bank, crying bitter tears of grief. Her deep agony echoed in the silence of the dawn. She had done all she could. His fate lay with the gods. The boy was not left entirely alone that day. Miriam, his young sister, trailed behind like a ghost. Hiding in the tall reeds, she watched with eager, sharp eyes. Her small feet stepped along the muddy bank in silence. Determined to see the destiny of her brother, she dashed through the shadows, keeping the small ark in sight. The basket bobbed upon the rough waters of the stream, a speck of life amidst a realm of endless, tragic doom. Miriam gasped as she saw a massive beast nearby. It snapped its deadly jaws just inches from the fragile craft. A sudden ripple pushed the fragile vessel safe aside. A hidden force seemed to guide him through the dark abyss. An unseen hand seemed to steer the fragile wooden ark, keeping it safe from the rocks and the massive beasts. The basket floated past the perilous and murky swamp. It entered the clear waters of the Grand Palace Baths. Here the river was lined with immaculate white stairs. Lush lotus flowers bloomed under the warm morning sun. The water was calm, sparkling with a divine golden glow. The cries of Goshen were replaced by soft, royal songs. Miriam hid behind a thick bush of palm leaves and stalks. She held her breath, spotting a group of royal guards. The Egyptian princess stood by the calm water's edge. Her beauty outshone the bright gold upon her chest. Daughter of the cruel tyrant they all deeply feared. Heir to the mighty empire that enslaved their race. She had come to bathe in the sacred river stream of life, surrounded by her maidens in white linen gowns. Suddenly, her royal eyes caught a very strange shape. A dark, pitched basket tangled in the thick reeds nearby. What was this ugly stain on her perfect royal domain? She pointed her finger, giving a swift command. "Fetch that object for me," she ordered with a proud tone. A servant bowed and waded into the cold river. Miriam watched in sheer horror from her hiding spot. If they knew he was Hebrew, he would surely perish. The maiden lifted the dripping, black, woven box. She brought it up the stairs, placing it at her feet. The royal princess leaned elegantly to the ground. She reached out to gently open the tight woven lid. As light flooded the interior of the small, dark space, the infant woke up and began to loudly cry. His piercing wail echoed through the grandeur of the bath. A slave child's cry, reaching the ears of royalty. The princess stared at the helpless infant wrapped in coarse cloth. She recognized the clear features of a slave. Her father's cruel law demanded his tragic doom. By all rules of Egypt, she should throw him to the waves. According to ancient myth, tension filled the still air. Handmaidens held their breath, waiting for the final word. Seeing his tearful face, her stern expression changed fast. A wave of deep pity washed over her proud soul. In a twist of fate, the enemy's heart was deeply moved. Compassion conquered fear of the tyrant's law. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she whispered in awe. She pulled the weeping infant to her warm chest. Miriam stepped from the reeds with a brave, beating heart. She offered to find a nurse for the young child. The princess agreed to the clever request. Miriam rushed to bring her mother back to the bath. Jochebed held her sweet son in her warm arms once more, now paid by the crown to nurse the child she bore. The cruel design of the tyrant had failed at last. The dark river became the true cradle of new life. The young boy grew strong in the loving care of his mother, safe from the spears and the wrath of the guards. When the boy was older, she brought him back to the palace, returning him to the princess as required. She claimed him as her own and gave him a noble, royal name, named Moses, drawn from the dark river tide. He would eat from the golden plates of the Egyptian kings, learning wisdom from the realm that crushed his kin. The man destined to shatter the chains of the Hebrew slaves was raised in the heart of the royal lair. A mighty empire, with all its weapons and dark force, was outsmarted by a mother's fearless, deep love. Behind the marble walls of the Grand Palace, a silent storm was brewing for the future of the world. Moses grew into a noble prince of the mighty realm. His Hebrew blood still rushed deep in his veins. He would soon face a choice between two nations, to rule with an iron fist, or suffer with his kin. The sight of a broken slave would shatter his false peace, igniting a fierce wrath to change time forever. He would strike down a guard to save a fallen man, becoming a hunted outlaw in the desert sands. Banished to the wasteland, he would wander all alone, until a burning bush calls his name from the ashes. The story of his exile is a tale for next time. The legacy of the basket rings through history, raised by the very empire that enslaved his kin. Was this divine intervention or grand irony? Would you defy a tyrant to save an innocent life? Join us as we uncover more ancient legends. Please like this tale and share it with your good friends. Subscribe for more incredible, epic history.